falling for nobody else but you.
Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Cooking with Jean. I'm Jean Lanahan from East Wind Lobster and Grill right here in Buzzards Bay on the Wareham line. So I thank you Wareham residents for inviting me to be on your cable network. This is going to be great. Today we're making in honor of March, we're making an Irish fisherman soup.
I'm flying high, but I've got a feeling I'm falling for nobody else but you.
This is actually a very simple soup. The main ingredients, the star ingredients in this soup are salmon and haddock. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pan-sear some salmon and haddock. I'm doing a little bit of a spin on this today. We're gonna use some gluten-free beer because traditionally I make this dish as a gluten-free dish. So we're gonna season up our salmon and haddock and we're gonna poach it in a little bit of gluten-free beer. As that's cooking, we're gonna add our mirepoix, which is our celery, onion, and carrot. We're going to dice this actually today in a food processor just to show you how quick and easy this whole thing can be. It should be like a 20-minute soup as opposed to it's going to taste like a 5-hour soup, but we're going to get it done in about 20 minutes. So I'm going to start with our salmon. We're going to season this up with what I call our house spice. It is our house spice. We call it Mama Bear. That's me, Mama Bear. And the way that we make this spice is actually, it's in order. I layered it here for you before I shook it up. It's onion, garlic, parsley, coarse pepper, and sea salt. So when you shake this all up, it goes into a container like this, and we probably make a batch of this a week. It's a great complement to fish and to chicken. It's awesome in this soup. The other great spice in this soup that we're using today is fresh dill. So there's a little bit of a spin on this soup with some cabbage and potatoes, sweet potatoes. So let me get our fish going. I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil. We're going to move over to the stove. A key when you're sauteing or trying to pan-sear, we want to get a little bit of a crust on this salmon. It just really adds a great depth to the soup. So I'm getting my pan heated. I'm not going to add my olive oil yet because we don't want it to burn. So I'm going to spice up this is about 3/4 of a pound of salmon. This is Canadian salmon. It's skinned, and this is about 3/4 of a pound of haddock as well. So we're going to put this pretty liberally onto the fish. Now I'm going to add a little olive oil to the pan. A little goes a long way. It expands. So not too much. We just want it to get almost to a smoking point. So we want to put a little bit of crust on the salmon. Not so much the haddock, but definitely the salmon. We're going to use gluten-free beer today. You can totally skip the beer, or you can add a denser beer, you can add a very hoppy beer, you can add a dark beer. So we see that the salmon is starting to get a little bit of a crust on there. I'm going to add probably a half a bottle of beer. This is going to add flavor as well. So we're going to finish poaching the fish in this nice gluten-free beer. Okay, we're just going to let that hang out. This one works like this. Even. Look how simple that is. That part is done. Into our stock pot, I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of butter. There we go. I'm going to add the veggies that I just diced or minced. Again, what we're doing here is we're getting our vegetables, our mirepoix, cooked before we add the next layer. And this is going to speed up. It's going to make the soup so much quicker. Once our onions and celery and carrots are nice and tender, we can then add the rest of our delicious ingredients. We can also see that our fish over there is doing some beautiful things, simmering away in the beer. Just going to pulse up the onions now. God, I love this machine. Perfectly minced onion, no crying. Now, what we don't want to do, we do not want to caramelize our vegetables. We just want them to melt. So I added a little bit of butter in here. I'm now going to add a little bit of chicken stock, chicken broth. This is about 2 quarts, which we're going to use. Again, it's on the recipe. When we look at the recipe a little bit more, we're going to use about 2 quarts in total of chicken broth and a quart of clam broth. I'm going to just check our fish here. The haddock is 99% done, as is the salmon, so I'll just break it up. This total recipe calls for about 3 tablespoons of Mama Bear. We did a tablespoon over here. Now we're going to put 2 tablespoons over here. So, as we go, we're looking for the onions and the carrots and the celery to be about 90% cooked. They're getting nice and melted in here. Super key ingredient in this recipe is cabbage. That's why I call it an Irish fisherman soup, cabbage. This is about 4 cups. If you're not a cabbage lover, you don't have to add 4 cups. If you are a cabbage lover like I am, we're going to use the whole 4 cups. We're going to saute this on the side. We're working with 2 quarts of chicken broth and a quart of clam broth. We have all the recipe, which we can explain a little bit better later.
And I got a feeling I'm falling. Show me the ring and I'll jump right through.
Again, that was 3/4 of the haddock. Again, this is a gluten-free soup, so there's no flour. There's very little fat. I don't know if you've watched that. And there's very little salt. But it's going to be one flavorful dish.
But I got a feeling I'm falling for nobody else but you.
Easily half a gallon. So you just add the potatoes and pull it out of the freezer. But there's no cream in here, so it's the cabbage now. You can see the consistency of the cabbage. Again, this was about 2 cups. You could add more if you like.
Nobody else but you. I'm flying high, but show me the ring and I'll jump right.
Okay, our soup is about 90% cooked. What we're going to do now is add some fresh dill. On the recipe, which we'll show online, on the recipe it has a tablespoon of dill weed, which is a lot stronger than fresh dill. So the general rule is if you were using a dried spice, you use about a third, or you use 3 times more when you're using a fresh spice. So we're going to do about 3 tablespoons of minced fresh dill.
Show me the ring and I'll jump right through. Show me the ring and I'll
That's about 3
jump
tablespoons.
right through.
Let's add the dill. Look at those colors. So to talk a little bit more about the ingredients, we had the haddock and salmon, which we poached in some gluten-free beer with some spice. We cooked our mirepoix on the side. We got that nice and soft, and then we cheated a little bit. We had cooked about a quart worth of red diced potatoes, which is about 4 potatoes. We pre-cooked those, and we also pre-cooked about a half of a sweet potato, only to save time. That's what this is all about. We want it to be fresh, delicious, and simple. So that's our motto around here. So once we added the fish and the stock, which is chicken stock and clam stock, or clam broth, about 3 quarts in total. We then sauteed some cabbage. I'm sorry, we sauteed some cabbage on the side with a little bit more beer, added that, and the soup is done. It came to a nice boil. We tested it for salt and pepper. And for all of you out there who love this soup, now you know how to make it. We're going to serve this today as a lunch. This is a lunch that we serve in the store as well. You get your choice of soup and a stuffy. This is a homemade stuffed quahog. Just garnish this soup with a little extra cabbage. Give it a little bit of a crunch and some more freshness on the top.
Show me the ring and I'll jump right through. Show me the
Thank you for joining us on Cooking with Jean. I can't wait for next time, which we're going to make some fresh stuffed quahogs from scratch. So you'll know how to make this whole presentation for yourself and for your family and friends. That's a winner.
I used to